Okay, I am in a special room, and I have the chance to speak with the Assistant Vice President of Acura Sales, Emil Korkor. Emil, how did I do? Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Perfectly.
Oh, okay.
Flawless
Great
execution.
Start. Emil, we just saw for the first time the brand new 2024 Acura ZDX Type S.
Yeah.
Its pre-order sales can start now. And we're going to start seeing the first delivered early in 2024.
Correct.
This is a big shift for the Acura brand because it's the first EV. So from your perspective, how do you approach something like that?
Carefully. I think it's going to be a balanced approach. We have to come out very aggressively in how we speak about this vehicle, because if we think back on how Acura started in 1986, it was a disruptor brand. It basically took the segments by storm that it launched into with Legend and then Integra. Same approach with ZDX. Right? I think the market is ripe right now for ZDX. I think competition is building. But I think we're opening up a new channel in terms of how we look at electrified vehicles with no compromise. That's really our approach. So not making any excuses, just attacking, I think is the approach.
It's one of the first things that caught my eye about this car was the name ZDX.
Right.
It was first used, I believe it was 2009, and it was like an SUV coupe kind of a thing. What was the motivation to bring back the ZDX nameplate, but in a very, very different way?
Yeah, I think just the letter Z and zero emission just seemed perfect. It was a name on our roster that really made a lot of sense. And I know there's a lot of speculation out there whether this is a continuation of the original ZDX, and that's not the case. This is an all-new vehicle.
It's definitely not.
Yeah,
Continue.
It's an all-new vehicle, and I think we just take advantage of a great name that we had out there, and also it brings back some good memories in terms of our first vehicle, first fully developed at the Acura Design Studio. So for us, it's a very special name as well. Not taking away anything from the original ZDX, which was tremendous for us in terms of design, execution, great performance SUV as well.
Developed. You said that word. That's another really interesting aspect of this car. It was co-developed with GM on the Ultium platform.
Right.
How do you work with that, and how do you distinguish the Acura against the GM products, and how do you marry the fact that this is a shared platform and make it distinctly Acura at the same time?
Yeah, we think of it as you're basically taking the skateboard or the bottom platform, which is essentially the battery pack, and that technology, and then building from there. Everything above that line is Acura. Dynamics, performance, interior, styling, everything's unique to us. So when we talk about development, it was a very dedicated development strategy from the design team in Los Angeles to build this vehicle to be uniquely Acura. So if you look at the product offerings on both sides between GM and Acura, you'll notice that nothing is similar. From the exterior, and the drive itself is going to be very unique as well.
I am looking forward to confirm that sometime soon, hopefully. The other thing that caught my eye about this car was its price.
Right.
$70,000-ish is the starting price for the Type S, the higher performance, all-wheel drive version of this ZDX. That price is pretty darn competitive with the MDX Type S, and yet there's a lot of new technology built into this thing. Kind of surprised that the price point, frankly, is as low as it is. So talk to me a little bit more about how you guys were able to price the car at this level, and what do you think it competes with as a result?
Yeah. I think we're not quite fully there yet in terms of the final price point, but to your point, I mean, at around $70,000 versus what's out in the marketplace right now, it's a pretty good position for us. And that was really the priority. As I said before, if you're really going to be a disruptor, you're going to really go out there and challenge what's in the marketplace right now. You got to be smart in how you position a vehicle. So pricing is one of the key features or key things that we focused on in terms of our total strategy. So while we're not completely done yet, the goal is to position this vehicle very aggressively within what's available in the segment right now, to compete as aggressively as we can. With comparison to MDX, I think it's going to come down to customer preference. I think the two packages are different. What you get from an MDX versus what you get from a ZDX.
Well, I mean, 2 rows versus 3 rows.
Right.
That's a stark contrast right away. This thing is more than 2.5 inches shorter.
Right.
I imagine its off-road prowess probably isn't quite as good as you want to advertise with the MDX. So imagine there's several things.
Yeah, there's a few differences, but I mean, again, you're catering to a very different buyer, potentially, than what you'd get from MDX. But it depends on how those buyers perceive these vehicles and what their needs are. We could see some customers transitioning from MDX to ZDX. That's totally okay. No issue.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're not into the details of pricing yet, but is this car going to make Acura money, or is this like a loss leader to build awareness of the EV portion of the Acura brand?
Well, I think it's public knowledge how expensive EV models are to
Battery
build.
packs alone, man. Yeah.
It's very challenging in terms of using it as a profit pillar. So it's really not about how much money this car makes, but how we are bringing it to market, how it's going to really start the electric revolution for Acura. So that's really the priority for us right now, and the goal of the vehicle itself. From a dealer perspective, great opportunity for them as well to expand on their customer base, build up their units in operation, and again, launch them into this new era.
How does this car fit in the Acura lineup? SUVs specifically, we have RDX, MDX, and now we have the ZDX.
Right.
Nearly the length of the MDX in terms of size. Price points are different, everything else. So where do you envision this as part of the broader Acura lineup?
Well, I think it'd be a good complement to MDX overall. Slightly larger than RDX, but kind of fitting in the middle somewhat. So really, it depends on the customer's need in terms of their space requirement and whether they're a BEV customer or an ICE customer. But yeah, short answer would be somewhere in the middle between RDX and MDX.
Got it. Okay, so the MDX is still retaining flagship status for the moment.
Right.
Okay. Now, we've talked about the Type S, or viewed the ZDX through the Type S portion of it, but there is the A-spec version of the ZDX coming as well. And indeed, there will be a rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive version of it. And the estimated starting price of that is $60,000, even more aggressive. How do you differentiate an A-spec ZDX customer versus a Type S ZDX customer? That's really, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, well, it's, again, good question. And it really depends on the needs of the customer. If they're more focused on performance, they're looking for something that is a little bit more exhilarating in terms of the overall visceral feel of the car. I think Type S is more for that customer. But the goal is not to diminish the trims beneath Type S to a point where they're not performance oriented. They're all performance oriented. It's just that the Type S will bring it to another level.
Yeah, yeah. And you can see that in terms of the estimated ranges, where the Type S has a lower estimated range despite fundamentally also having the same battery pack and dual motor and everything else. And that points to things like higher rolling resistant tires, maybe some bodywork changes compared to the A spec. So it'll be interesting to see the final production versions of these different vehicles rolling around. And I'm just curious of excitement, anxiety, of dipping into this EV space. EVs are growing, but there's still a lot of resistance to change there. So how are you looking at that part of this?
Yeah. Excited about it. I mean, it's whenever you take on a new challenge, there's always a little bit of anxiety on how you're, the level of success that you're going to see. But I think that with the time that we took to develop this vehicle, the execution of the vehicle itself, I think, is very strong, and we've matured it, understanding what's going on in the marketplace right now, right? So, avoiding some of the compromises that we see out there, giving a customer the best choice within the segment that they're shopping. We're very confident that it's going to be successful. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of anxiety from a consumer perspective, but our own customers that we've seen leave the brand have told us that if you offered an electrified vehicle, it would have never left. So there's a good opportunity for us to reclaim a lot of customers that we have lost to competitors.
Interesting.
And that's what's exciting for us. So looking forward to that.
And I'm cautiously optimistic that the NACS announcement that Acura will indeed be a part of that, and that the ZDX will be able to adapt to that, will help, because the infrastructure side of the EV problem is quickly growing to be the biggest part of the problem. And now we're getting used to ranges of over 300 miles or near 300 miles. So it'll be interesting to see if the infrastructure builds up and then the popularity of EVs explode.
Right.
So different manufacturers have made commitments of, we will be full EV or no more combustion engines by this year or whatever. Acura has not made a formal announcement in that regard, but this does seem to be an indicator that Acura is going in that direction. Can you speak at a high level of how aggressive Acura is going to be about transition?
Yeah, we haven't put a line in the sand. I think
I can get some sand if you want to. We can do this now.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to avoid that for a very specific reason, and that is customer demand and adoption, as we talked about. So not every customer is ready to convert, and forcing them into a propulsion system that they're not quite ready for is not a great strategy for any brand. So making sure we take the time to gauge the demand of the consumer is really important. And that's why we're taking this staged approach. A lot of customers have asked, why did you take so long to bring an electrified product? Well, this is why. We really need to understand what the demand looks like out there so that we can format our lineup appropriately. We move too quickly, you run the risk of potentially alienating a lot of customers that might not be ready. Some infrastructure issues on some of the states out there, which is very clear. So preparing and being mindful of some of the variables out there, including infrastructure, is really important before you make that full transition plan. So really demand-based approach and taking our time to really get a good understanding of what our customers really want and what the market demands is really important.
Well, Emil, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. As soon as I find some sand, I'll have you back and we can draw a line in it, but really appreciate your time.
Love it. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you.